You're watching CBS News 24/7, and quite an extraordinary meeting in the Oval Office between President Trump and New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. They were both very complimentary, as you heard, very civil. And this comes just weeks after the president urged voters not to vote for him in New York City's mayoral election. The president expressed hope for Mamdani's tenure as mayor. Listen.
I feel very confident that he can do a very good job. I think he is going to surprise some conservative people, actually, and some very liberal people. He won't surprise them because they already like him.
Mamdani as well, also very complimentary of Trump about their meeting this afternoon.
I appreciated the meeting with the president, and as he said, it was a productive meeting focused on a place of shared admiration and love, which is New York City, and the need to deliver affordability to New Yorkers, the 8.5 million people who call our city their home, who are struggling to afford life in the most expensive city in the United States of America. We spoke about rent, we spoke about groceries, we spoke about utilities, we spoke about the different ways in which people are being pushed out, and I appreciated the time with the president, I appreciated the conversation. I look forward to working together to deliver that affordability for New Yorkers.
CBS News political reporter Zak Hudak joining us live now. Zak, a lot of eyes on this conversation, on this meeting. You know, quite a different tone before this election. The president really now giving his stamp of approval for Mamdani, the two of them having a conversation, if you will, as opposed to prior to the election. Your thoughts and take on this?
Jules, I think it was somewhat of a surprise to all of us to see how well they were getting along. But I think at the heart of that is what they said they talked about before they let the cameras in, which is making New York affordable for New Yorkers. And I think really what that illustrates is the fine line between the far right campaign that President Trump ran and the far left Democratic Socialist campaign that Mamdani ran. We saw this even in the past with a lot of similarities between President Trump's campaigns and Bernie Sanders' campaigns. I think the reality here is that while they are on different ends of the political spectrum, they are both populists, and they both realize that what Americans care about most right now, and we continue to see this in the polling that we keep doing, is affordability and bringing prices down for Americans and helping everyday Americans. I think the other thing that played a factor in the two of them getting along so well is they are both extremely charismatic politicians. I think both of them, a lot of their political strength comes from their ability to captivate a crowd. And I think they recognize that in one another, and they recognize that there are ways that they could actually help one another. Now, there are some difficulties here. We know that House Republicans, for the most part, are gearing up to run in 2026 in the midterms, largely against Mamdani. They plan to paint their opponents as connected to this Democratic Socialist who is the mayor, or going to be the mayor of the largest city in the country. That does create, obviously, a tension between the way that President Trump is talking about them. We saw one of the questions from the press was about Elise Stefanik being very harsh on Mamdani, calling him a jihadist, and President Trump sort of batted that down and said he seems like a very reasonable guy, but she's out campaigning, and sometimes you say things when you're campaigning. So I think this wasn't quite what anyone expected, but there are explanations for it, and it seems that there is a bit of a budding bromance between these two.
Yeah, absolutely. They were on the same page on certain topics. Even the president saying he would live in New York under Mamdani's leadership as mayor, which he didn't say that weeks ago.
That's exactly right. It is a fact that President Trump hated passionately Bill de Blasio, and even Eric Adams, the two of them would rub each other the wrong way at times. But I think another factor here is that they are both expert flatterers. You saw them really flattering one another and praising one another in that press conference. And I think they both knew that it's not what was expected, and I think they both realized, the president even said at one point, the press is eating this up. And he was absolutely right, because it's not what people expected. And there is something that they can both get from one another. Mamdani needs the president to continue to allow federal funds to go to New York. Just about a month and a half ago, at the beginning of the shutdown, we saw the president halt nearly $20 million in federal funding that would have gone to infrastructure projects in New York. In order to enact his agenda, Mamdani is going to need federal funds, and there's about $10 billion in federal funds that theoretically could be halted by the administration. So he needs that from President Trump. President Trump, on the other hand, has a wide-ranging immigration agenda, particularly focused on major cities. He's going to need Mamdani to not be too much against that. I can't imagine that he'll go fully along with that. I can't imagine he'll want ICE on the streets of New York. But nonetheless, the president needs him to somewhat go along with that. And there's no question that this president is a New Yorker and loves New York. He clearly desires for it to be a place that welcomes him when he goes back there. He's spent in recent years more and more time in Florida. And as he mentioned, he said it's a place he could see himself living in the future. So I think they both have things to gain from having a friendly relationship with one another.
Yeah, absolutely. Zak Hudak in Washington, thank you so much. And joining us live now is Joel Payne, CBS News political contributor and chief communications officer for Move On. And also we have Kevin Sheridan, Republican strategist and former RNC spokesperson. Boy, what a meeting. It comes after months of hostility between the two. I'll start with you, Joel. What is your reaction to today's meeting?
Well, it's good to be with you. It's pretty clear to me that these two political athletes kind of sized each other up and, maybe see some things about each other that they have in common. They both have an independent power base separate of the establishment of both of their parties. They're both charismatic. And they both, Donald Trump in his last campaign and Zohran Mamdani in his recent campaign both had a hyper focus on people's bottom lines. Now, obviously, there are a lot of Democrats that don't think Donald Trump has stayed true to that. But Zohran Mamdani himself acknowledged that many New Yorkers voted for Donald Trump because of that. And I think it's interesting that they found some commonality. And it's not all that surprising to me, though, that these two men were able to find some ability to sit next to each other and to break bread, so to speak. The last thing I would just say is, both of the political establishments are going to be roiled by this. If you're a Republican like an Elise Stefanik, or if you are Republicans in the House who were passing a resolution that was essentially trying to shade Zohran Mamdani today, you've got to be wondering about whether or not the president is helping you with your attempt to hang Zohran Mamdani around every Democrat's neck around the country. And if you're members of the Democratic establishment like Chuck Schumer, who still has not said that he supports Zohran Mamdani publicly, you've got to be wondering why you put so much distance in between him. So I think there's so many dimensions to look at what we just witnessed in the Oval Office.
Certainly. I'll ask you, Kevin, did you expect this kind of conversation? And what does Mamdani want from Trump, and how does that play into the dynamic?
As far as expectations, I don't think anyone knew what we were going to get, but it doesn't surprise me it went this way. Joel said political athletes, which they both are. They're both entertainers. And I think they like the show. And I think they're flattering each other and to get this relationship kicked off. The devil will be in all the details, of course. If the immigration enforcement doesn't go Trump's way, I think he's going to start threatening to withhold funds. But they made a lot of good noises about building housing, which would be great for New Yorkers. But they have very different approaches to getting affordability for New Yorkers. We'll see once they get going, where the tension really ends up. But right now, much of that tension is between New York City and Albany, not between New York City and just Washington, D.C. That funding so far hasn't, been threatened in any way. But Albany has already said under Governor Hochul that they are not raising taxes to fund his projects.
I really didn't see a power play here, or who won or who came out on top. What are your thoughts on that, Kevin?
Yeah, I think it's a good meeting for both of them. I think they did enough to hit all the right notes. I don't think their bases are going to be too upset with anything that was said, because this is just getting started, and we'll see when. If Mamdani goes hardcore left and starts doing some things that are really offensive to Trump and to Republicans, then I think, Trump will weigh in then. But right now, I think they both did what they needed to do. And Mamdani clearly took the example of Zelensky going into the Oval Office and having that disastrous first meeting. And he did it the right way. He went in, complimented him, had good, productive conversation. And that's pretty much what all world leaders and state leaders and city leaders are now doing, because they saw the terrible example of that first Zelensky meeting.
Well, sure, there can be some unpredictability. So, Joel, do you feel the same way?
Well, I disagree a bit with Kevin's take on the basis of the both parties. I mean, I think Mamdani is just beginning his relationship with what you might call the Democratic Party base. I think Donald Trump probably created a lot of problems for Republicans. Again, if one of your political objectives over the next year is to make Zohran Mamdani the boogeyman that every Democrat has to account for in their home districts across the country, Donald Trump did a lot of work to undercut that in the last 30 minutes or so. I mean, he complimented Zohran Mamdani. He talked about how he would live in New York City. He undercut direct attacks from Republicans today. I mean, Zohran Mamdani got so much out of this meeting politically. And I think what it kind of somewhat tells me is a little bit of Donald Trump's thinking as he enters the second year of his presidency. I think you have a president that is not quite as buoyant as he entered the year. And I do think there's some calculus here of what is it that this guy is saying right now that's making him popular and that helped him cut through a very complicated political ecosystem that I can maybe learn from. And I know that sounds strange given the political polarities that they represent, but I really did see some curiosity from Donald Trump that's true to who he is as an instinctive political thinker.
Kevin Sheridan and Joel Payne, I thank you both for your comments and insight. Thanks so much.